Um, but I feel happy we've been warned.
You have been warned, and now you've been scorned by the Sony. Dum 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 dum. Also, I've noticed that the PlayStation 4 app no longer seems to work for me ever, so I now just go into YouTube and watch my own stream and look at the comments on there, which is a good point to say hello, everybody, and welcome. So I put you in 144p to Failcast F1 for the 2019 F1 season.
Whoop, whoop.
And that tooting over there is my far more talented taco tongue-twisting totty, Mr. Definitely Zero. How you doing, good sir?
¿Cómo estás, señor? May I be the first to say, happy birthday, Mr. President. It's your birthday.
It's my birthday. It's my birthday. Woo. Thank you very much, good sir. And there is
Yeah,
nowhere else I'd rather be than talking absolute bollocks for 2 hours, but actually getting everything right with yourself.
Superb. I'm flattered and delighted to hear that. In celebration, I'm having a very special stream beverage today. It's the return of the Red Bull White Edition, which, as keen viewers and fans of beverage today will know, is coconut and blueberry flavour.
Wow. I can taste it through the...
Oh, those two flavours do not belong anywhere near each other. Delicious.
Said with such conviction.
Yeah, no, really, it's perverse, but it works. It's really wrong. Like, I don't know, like spanking. It's fun, but you're still hitting a woman.
Like heart and wall guns.
Yeah, exactly. So, we are in Hungary.
Yes, which is news to me because I was going on about how I've been drinking for quite a while today, as it is birthday day, and I was like, oh, it's only France. None of the apexes matter around there anyway because they're in the wrong place in the corners.
And it turns out you have picked the day that we're driving one of the more technical circuits to knock back a few bevies in the afternoon. So, excellent news.
Well done.
I'm sure the pit crew are on standby with the extra front wings. But it is a circuit that historically we've both done pretty reasonably at.
Yeah.
Which is odd because we tend to do terribly at Monaco. But, you know, that's the way the cookie crumbles. You have leapfrogged me by a very proud and relevant 4 points. So hopefully we can maintain some kind of close parity. I'm rooting for you today, though. This is the one race I really don't want to win. I want you to have a win on your birthday. I think that is good. I managed to win on my birthday. I want you to sort of complete the double.
The double whammoos. Yeah, no, that would be cool. I'm historically not too bad round here, and in this edition, again, because it's a tighter, twistier circuit, higher temperatures always go through my titties. So, yeah, that might cause me a bit of a problem. But before we dive actually into the actual real F1s itself, I'm now deep into the clunge of Season 2 of my career mode. And I've basically done all of the ultimate upgrades on tyre wear and stuff like that. And it really does actually make a massive difference to me in terms of how I can actually do a proper race in career mode. So I was like, oh, this is life. I now know why to go for car direction in future games if I'm always going to be shit at tyre wear and tyre temperatures.
You've probably got further than me then into Season 2, because I'm stuck at Azerbaijan because my car can't meet any of the time targets in practice, and I'm far too stubborn to allow that to stand. I don't know if I want balanced or harder tyres.
I've gone balanced, but I feel like I may have regretted that decision.
Yeah, I'm going harder. I'm going in hard. That probably means I have no ultra softs for the race, and I may end up swearing about that later. But it wouldn't be fun if I didn't do a nonsensical strategy.
Exactly. It's what we come to expect in this Failcast podcast. And we've got quite a few people actually joining in the chat, so welcome everyone.
Pip, hello.
Let us know your thoughts of the Australian Grand Prix pools and the kicking off of the 2019 season. and there is plenty to discuss methinks.
There is. This week, I just wanted to throw out there that in good news, I have, for this race, only one setup. So I won't be getting caught out by having 2 or 3 setups for a circuit and naming them in ways that tell me nothing about what the setup does. So hopefully I don't have to rely on that as an excuse for a poor performance. So, the season kicked off last weekend. Now, I was out of town, so I have only seen highlights and snippets, but I think enough to for us to have a fairly in-depth discussion.
Yeah.
And certainly, I want to kick off by saying that the running order was definitely at no point over the weekend what I thought it was going to be. Almost every team surprised me in some way, save for Williams, who delivered 0 surprises to anybody. I mean, let's be honest, even Robert Kubica's mum didn't pick him for her Grand Prix predictor team on the F1 website. So, shall we start with Williams? Because, I mean, although it's kind of a juicy topic, I feel it's the one that is the most predictable. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, no, happy to, you know me, I always come from behind. Couple of minutes in already making lube jokes. No, that makes quite good sense actually, because the big thing, I guess, well, not the big thing, was I didn't realise just how bad it had got in between the testing and the race, because like diving back from the actual Grand Prix itself, I'd heard rumours, but I didn't know to what extent, that parts of the car had to be redesigned and redone between testing and the race, because it was illegal, because their suspensions weren't actually to legal specification. And you just think, like, that is quite a key part of the car to get completely wrong. And so no wonder they were on... If Robert Kubica could have had a third foot to put behind him, he would have been on that.
Oh, god damn it.
Oh no, you started again.
Yes, if you don't mind. Sorry about that, everyone, but I was behind Verstappen, and then Hulkenberg came out of the pits and broke right in front of me and took my wheel off. So, thanks for nothing, Nico Hulkenberg. Let me see. You'll have to invite me back, I believe, sir.
Okay. I'm on it. Friends only.
Do you know, really, it should be you that's happening to. He did get a 5-position grid penalty, though, for it.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Anyway, sorry, I've broken up the flow there.
No.
You're right. It's a significant component, and it's unacceptable. Hold on. How do I accept that invitation? Where has it gone? What's going on?
It will be up in your...
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
Hopefully.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, because apparently, and you've got to judge... having now watched Autosport's video coverage and seeing just how biased they are, I have to really take some of what they say with a pinch of salt. But apparently, Paddy Lowe was busy talking to people about this suspension geometry and stuff like that, and saying, "Oh, I'm not sure, but if it works, it's going to be an absolute blinder." So clearly he thought it was going to be dodgy, like way back when, but still went ahead with it anyway. No backup anywhere. Yeah, I'm just a bit meh over the whole kind of thing, and so...
Well, I mean, if I could just interject for a moment,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about that, because part of me thinks that's what he should have been doing, really, because Williams did need something radical, right?
Yeah.
They did need a bit of a kick up the arse, so maybe it was the time to take a risk in the hope of making a big gain, but at the same time, you also kind of think, well, for a team that's on the precipice, maybe not. I'm kind of actually pretty ambivalent about what he should have done there, whether he made the right call or not. I mean, it's easy to say with hindsight that, oh, what a stupid idiot, but to be honest, I'm not sure I can necessarily be too harsh on him for that specific point of what he's done. I still think it's right that he's removed from his position because I think too much has gone wrong. Yep. But I don't know if I'm prepared to hold him over the coals exactly for trying to make a bold decision.
No, I think I'd rather he'd have got some clarity from the FIA and stuff around it first. A bit like how you'd have seen Alfa Romeo with their front wing, making sure that was all within guidelines, and everyone was like, "Ooh, different," but within. Whereas it's actually written very clearly the amount of spokes that come out of the suspension. And everyone at testing was like, why have they got one extra? So it was like immediately everyone was like, that's not allowed. I know F1 historically have been like a bit meh.
Sorry, I'm trying to let Bottas through and he just won't go through.
Has the game already been updated to include his hard-nosed beard and angry AI?
I can't see. He's wearing his helmet. Safety first.
Okay.
Well, actually, I'm glad you mentioned Alfa Romeo because it's reminded me that there's quite a bit I want to talk about on them later on. But yeah, I mean, you sort of think Rule 1 would be to make sure you're not doing anything that's explicitly illegal. I don't know. I mean, it was disappointing because the car was garbage anyway, and it was pretty clear even before testing it was going to be garbage because Williams themselves were saying, well, we think we've lost about 2 seconds on ourselves. Yeah. Now, given everyone else's car is supposed to be faster than last year's, that really doesn't bode well.
No.
So I don't think anybody was expecting them to be anywhere other than last, and if they were expecting them to be anywhere other than last, then they don't really know Formula 1 very well. However, to have a car that's that poor and has to be modified at presumably great expense just to partake in the first Grand Prix to embarrass themselves, well, that requires a spankering, to be honest, of pretty epic proportions. I forgot how to speak there for a moment.
No, I completely agree because... So, yes, the car was well off the pace, particularly in Friday, but they were instructed basically, do not ride any curbs because we have no spare parts for you. So when Kubica then stuck it in the wall, in quali, when quote unquote, the car came alive and it surprised me. So they were like, it's interesting because he's like, there's something fundamentally that could actually work quite nicely here. But it scared the living daylights out of me when it actually worked how I wanted to, that I put it in the wall. And I think that just sets the tone, because you've spent all of the weekend not pushing because you're not able to. You then have to go and push, because I think if they would have coasted much further, particularly Kubica, was only, 1.5 seconds off the 107% rule? So they'd have had to imagine Williams applying for dispensation on that. How the mighty have fallen. And then he went and in the race clobbered his front wing off on an unfortunate incident with Gasly. I don't think there's anyone particularly at fault. If anyone, it was Gasly's fault, which I'll get onto later, and his absolute amateurishness all weekend. So yeah, it was just a bit of a mess. I think the main thing that came away from me for Williams is what a leader George Russell could very much be, and how well he held himself on and off the track, and I was really impressed.
Yeah, if the one good thing that came out of the weekend for Williams, I think, was the vindication for picking George Russell, rather than Sergei Sorokin, who has ruined my lap again. He's the arsehole AI this year, isn't he?
He's always really slow in my career mode, like half a second off Stroll.
I'm going to slow down and back off and let him get away from me, which could take some time, but it does allow me to take over talking duties. Yeah, I mean, Russell actually impressed me. I know he was running on his own for most of the Grand Prix, and it was hardly a a weekend to write home about for anything other than being his Grand Prix debut. But that said, super professional. I think he did a good job with very poor equipment. And I think Williams have been completely vindicated in their choice. Not that it ever really needed much justification, really. What's going to be much harder for them is explaining why Ocon is not in the other car. We know the reason. It's because of money. Because Ocon needed to be paid for, and Kubica paid for his ride, regardless of what Polish Twitter says. And he brings in 15 million a season, apparently, which is 15 million reasons not to drop him, I suppose, when the team's in not the best financial shape it's ever been in. What alarmed me is, and I know we're going to talk about this more later, for those who've watched the F1 documentary series on Netflix, which is fantastic, by the way, what you'll note is Claire Williams mentioning that their budget is about £125 million a season. Which astonished me, given that Force India have been operating on, what, 45?
Yeah, 45 to 60, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and you think, well, that requires some serious bloody justification then, your performances. 125 million a season. I mean, I would have thought Williams were operating on a fraction of that, the way the cars they've been turning out the last few years. I don't know where they're getting that money from. I mean, I don't think there's that much money in deodorant sales, is there?
No, and certainly not in start-up brands for mobile phones that haven't released yet. That must be from their engineering arm for when they sell
from the engineering business, I suppose.
It has to be, because God knows how they've done that. But yeah, when you consider Force India, now Racing Point, is the same engine. So then you've got they're spending double to go 2 seconds slower on their aerodynamics and packaging and how they put it all together. It just looks like a team that is utterly lost. And having heard some of the stuff from people within the team, they're saying morale's at an all-time low. People don't seem to know who's in charge. The person left back at the factory, they've still not replaced their aerodynamicists from last year. Rob Smedley's still not been replaced. So you just kind of think, what is going on? So if they've not got a clear leading direction, and now Paddy's gone, it's going to be a long old season.
Because I've been asking myself this, do you feel that maybe they've been a bit, I mean, not necessarily with Paddy Lowe, but they've been too quick to turn over staff, and that's causing harm also?
Absolutely.
Because there's been a lot of change at Williams since 2014, and a lot of change, and that's as disruptive as anything can be, really. Because although their driver lineup was stable for a few years, they only went backwards, and that's largely down to just this churning of staff in the back office. That, I mean, I certainly, I sound like I'm contradicting myself. I certainly wouldn't have kept on Paddy Lowe, but I think dropping Rob Smedley gradually and so many other engineers and aerodynamicists for not delivering immediate results. I mean, look at Ferrari. They've been, the last 2-3 years, reaping the benefit of sticking with... they changed the head honcho, but they stuck with the team itself.
Yeah.
And eventually, you can whip them into shape and get things all tied together. You've got to be able to organise to marshal your resources.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's helping them either. What I will say is, what you mentioned there about Kubica, I think that was the first in a long string of quite embarrassing excuses from Kubica that made me lose a little bit of respect for him, actually.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to join the rest of the world in beating him over the head. Because I still think the fact he's behind the wheel at all is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And I'm not going to, jump up and down on the bloke's neck, because it wasn't surprising to me that this happened. At no point, even when he was testing for Renault, did I think, oh, he will be back and he'll do a good job. I thought, outside chance maybe he'll be back, but the team would have to be pretty mad or desperate to do it, and then, Williams tell me, hold my beer and watch this. For me, I think Williams have got a lot of soul searching to do in terms of that choice. Now, Polish Twitter, of course, were divided. I was surprised to see actually a lot of people actually conceding that, okay, he shouldn't be in that car. Others were sort of, rending their garments and screaming at the sky, like, no! And then you've got like the small fraction who believe it's all a conspiracy, because he's a British driver in a British team and he's getting preferential treatment. And then there were others who making excuses, that he damaged the car and he had an inferior front wing or whatever. And it's like, well, fair enough, that's going to deliver some difference, I suppose. But he was, what was he, like close to 2 seconds off the back of Russell in quali? Did I get that right? It was like 1.6, something like that.
Yeah, it was 1.6 off in quali. He'd been consistently about 6 or 7 tenths off of Russell throughout the weekend. But basically, because he put it in the wall on his proper hot lap, I guess that wasn't quite representative. I think what was more representative for me, and again this could be down to potential damage and having an inferior rear wing and stuff like that, was his drop off of pace across the Grand Prix distance, which to me links to fitness and the ability to keep up to a certain thing with just general fitness levels of being able to manhandle a car that is now specifically designed to be a beast, because there is this push back to olden times of having a car that's more manhandly. I think he would have had less of a problem back in 2013, 2014, when we was less about massive grippy tyres and all of that kind of stuff, and running to fuel mixtures, because obviously we've upped the fuel limit this year, which means that you can run full pace longer, that kind of stuff. So it's more and more sapping away that makes it difficult for him to then have a rest and not get found out.
Yeah.
In my opinion, anyway.
I mean, what concerned me is that he was lapped by his own teammate.
Yeah, and that's not a front wing change. That's a half a minute jobby. So where did the other minute go?
It was 23 seconds, I believe it cost him that, and he finished 1 minute 20 something down on Russell.
Yeah.
That simply is not good enough. He just shouldn't be anywhere near that car, and it's painful to say. I take no pleasure in being right on this, because I still maintain that Kubica could have been one of the greats, but there's lots of people who could have been great. I mean, Frank Williams himself said there's probably 1,000 world champions out there that we'll never discover because they don't have the money or the chance to get behind the wheel of a car. And could have been is not is.
No.
And I think I don't know what Williams were getting out of this at any point, apart from maybe a little bit of PR and the money that I'm sure other drivers could have brought in.
I feel like
what surprises me is that Ocon doesn't come with backing. Because I would have thought that Mercedes, given that he seemed the heir apparent of Valtteri Bottas, which may not be such a cushy position this year as it was last year, you'd think they'd want to keep his skills sharp and not let him slip off the grid, but apparently they wanted to charge Williams for his services, which concerns me. But really, can you imagine what benefit they gain from a pairing such as Ocon and Russell? I mean, I'm not saying it'd get them off the back of the grid, but at least you'd be able to develop the car with some consistent benchmarks. I mean, really now you're just going to have to look at Russell's times for something representative of what the car's actually capable of, because I believe Russell is probably going to get about as much as possible out of it, based on what we've seen of him so far. God damn it, I can't seem to improve. My tyres have gone off.
I'd done that. I was 3 tenths up in the last corner, and I keep on buggling up the last 2 corners and then losing them all. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And again, this is me being purely speculative, but I wonder how you can develop a car for a driver that is not in the same physical condition as the rest, so that you can optimise it for drivability. I don't know. Maybe that's just me finding problems where there aren't any. It's guesswork. We are armchair people after all. But for me, going back to what you're saying about Williams and what they're getting out of it and what they're not getting out of it, a bit like last year where I think they thought, oh God, we've got an absolute dog of a car here, let's have Sergey in the car and we'll at least bankroll it for another year. I feel like they knew that this was going to go horribly wrong, and that's why they spent so long on signing Kubica, because they was like, right, we're not going to get the prize money, he'll pay us the prize money to the equivalent of us coming 8th in the championship, bankroll us another year, and then if we have a decent car next year, we'll put talent in there.
Actually, that's a pretty reasonable explanation, but I don't think Respect for Williams will survive the year.
No.
I think actually that's quite a short-sighted move, although it logically makes sense. I think it's probably going to damage the brand more than anything else. But that's hard to say as well, because Williams have to become my team this year. As the only independent underdog left on the grid that doesn't have a billionaire for an owner. So I think we were all in agreement then that garbage performance from Williams, and one that's got little hope of redemption throughout the season. I mean, it'd take one hell of an upgrade package to find 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's going to happen.
I think they'll get closer, but I still think they will be like a bit like Marussia 2015, just in their own little battle off the back.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I did also see Guido van der Gaard saying that he thinks he could catch Kubica in his Caterham, which I thought was quite spicy.
Guido van der Gaard back again.
Now, moving on to other things. I'd like, actually, I was going to dive into Alfa Romeo a little bit, but can we talk about McLaren?
Of course we can.
Because Lando Norris did a phenomenal job in qualifying. Because he got 9th, if I recall, right? Or was he even higher than that?
Than the grid, I felt. 8th or 9th, one of the two.
Well, still. Phenomenal job. But then, what the hell happened in the race?
So, his race was ruined by the Giovinazzi train, in my humble opinion, where Giovinazzi was in a role reversal that saw Kimi have his own sacrificial lamb instead of being the sacrificial lamb. Hello, Reflux, thanks for joining in the chat there. Essentially, Giovinazzi done the Raikkonen for what Raikkonen would do for Vettel, held everyone up, and Lando Norris couldn't seem to overtake him. I don't know if that's because Renault engine, just the way how they were dealing with stuff, but essentially he got stuck behind him for so long that him, Perez, Albon, basically all lost out to everyone else who stopped later, and they just all came out behind. So there was about 10 seconds off the back of everyone else. But in terms of actual pace, he was there and thereabouts, and so was Carlos Sainz before he blew up. So, yeah, I'm quietly and happily optimistic with McLaren and their pace, and I think this is definitely a step forward for them. I just think they needed to get it right. Interestingly, Verstappen out in Q1, by the way.
Which is a reversal to what happened in real life.
Yeah. Nearly.
See, because I mean, the thing is, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I feel about McLaren after the first Grand Prix. I guess mostly I was disappointed with Sainz's power unit failure, because I wanted to see what he was capable of over race distance. Because I'm a big Carlos Sainz fan, and the fact that he's been kind of homeless for 3 seasons, really, because Toro Rosso obviously was a dead end for him for some time before he was allowed to leave.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that he can find a niche in which he's able to show us what he's really capable of, because I think he's a really, really good driver, and he's just not always had the consistent platform to show it. So and I want to see Norris do well, of course. And I was a bit sick of talking about McLaren in such pessimistic terms.
Were you?
However,
Were you though? No, I there was, at least from my part, before you dive on, there was a little bit of smug whilst I gently slipped my tea with Pinky out as I watched them fail. But now I'm beyond it. It's okay. Sorry.
No, because it's a big name, and it was getting. I think it was getting embarrassing for any long-term fan of the sport to see such a storied name flounder the way it was. However, I also was getting to the end of my tether with Zach Brown, and having also seen the documentary on Netflix again, I was wondering, like, is the clock ticking here? Like, how is he still there? You know, how much time is he going to have? Because, you know, Bouye was the sacrificial lamb first time round, but I want to see how they perform over the next few rounds, because even if they've improved, it needs to be enough of an improvement, I think. And it's kind of hard to gauge right now whether it has been, but certainly it was an encouraging start, and I'm pleased, but very tentatively pleased. I also want to see how they develop the car over the year. Yes. But certainly Norris was a surprise in quali. And to be honest, almost every position was a surprise to me in some small way. I don't think a lot went the way that I thought it would.
I didn't expect Lando Norris to be the highest qualifying Renault-powered driver.
No. And actually, Renault is going to be a big topic for me during the course of this podcast, because not happy.
No.
Not at all happy.
No.
But yeah, I think if McLaren end up spearheading the Renault-powered, the Renault-powered two teams, then Renault have some serious questions to ask, and Daniel Ricciardo will almost certainly end up having a nervous breakdown. Because the way, basically, where Verstappen put his Red Bull is where I was secretly hoping Ricciardo would put his Renault at this Grand Prix. That was my fondest wish. I didn't think he'd win, but I was hoping, you know, based on very encouraging testing pace, I was hoping that Ricciardo would get on the podium on his Renault debut. That was my fond hope. Now, obviously, as soon as Friday practice rolled round, I saw that isn't happening, but it was definitely a hope. And I'm worried now. I mean, Renault say that they've got a very rapid and challenging schedule for car upgrades that hopefully may start moving them forward, but I have to say they really seem to have lost their way in this era of power units, and it's looking, at least initially, like Red Bull have made the right decision. Now, I did say that Red Bull did make the right decision, and as a Honda fan, I wanted to see Honda do well. I just didn't expect them to get results so immediately. I thought, you know, you'd start to see the Red Bull Honda alliance pay dividends maybe in its second or third season, and I thought the first season would have some niggling problems, and it may still deliver those, of course, but I certainly didn't foresee them on the podium. So it's looking very much like it's going to be a rough start to the season for Ricciardo and Hülkenberg. What did you make of their respective race performances?
What was really interesting was that McLaren, I think, seemed to be faster over one lap than Renault, but Renault seems to have the longer run pace better than McLaren, if that makes sense.
That was the encouraging thing for me, actually, that the Renault seems to be very, very light on its feet. Its tyre wear looks sensational, but I'm not sure how often that's really going to pay dividends.
I don't know. Maybe with the increase in fuel, they might be turning stuff up and then going a little bit faster around tracks and so on and so forth, and it might pay in a little bit there. But yeah, for me, yes, McLaren did go a bit backwards during the race, and some of that pace I think was down to the flattery that was Lando Norris's initial lap, which is fair enough. I think as long as McLaren can keep there and thereabouts to where Renault is, and again I think this will come back to the upgrades that not just the Renault power unit has, but also the cars themselves, Renault versus McLaren. That will kind of be the telling point as to who's got the staying power to increase over the point of the season, because what I get from this, particularly where the whole midfield is so closely compact, is it's going to be more of a development war this season than I think ever in recent memory. Because hello Ultraman Neo, thank you for joining. So for me, like you were saying there, waiting a few races will kind of be the more proof in the pudding, but it's also being able to sustain that. Because for me, the disappointment for Renault wasn't necessarily that Hülkenberg finished 7th. It was the gap between where he finished 7th and the fact that they're in the midfield and not in between the front and back in midfield, if that makes sense. I thought they'd be in the middle.
Yeah, to be honest, I really thought, based on what we saw in testing, that they'd replace Red Bull as the number 3 team. I really did, and that maybe sounds naive, but the signs were there. And even the technical analysis that we saw from some of the pundits implied that it was entirely possible that they'd join the big 3. But then, of course, we came to see that really doesn't seem to be the case. Now, usually you don't really see what a platform delivers until the first round of upgrade packages, which is usually in time for Monaco. But I think it's too big a gap so far, although we know Australia does tend to accentuate certain gaps. It looks a bit too big to my eye to be solved by an upgrade package. Now, Ricciardo did say that he saw it as a long-term project, but I do think he was maybe hoping for a Lewis to Mercedes quick turnaround, and I'm not sure that's going to be in the offing, because I have to say that Red Bull and Honda have got off to a flyer. I mean, it's a shame because I don't like Gasly and I don't like Verstappen, but I like Red Bull as a brand, and I like Honda very much. It just astonished me to see them out of the gate do so much better than I'd projected, and I just can't see Renault closing the gap to teams like Haas, because again they've managed to carry over more pace than I expected from last year. And certainly Alfa Romeo, I think, are going to go strength to strength, and I'm not sure Renault really can keep up with them, because we've always known that, you know, Sauber / Alfa Romeo have great development potential. They have fantastic facilities in Hinwil. And again, you saw in the Netflix documentary what you and I have been saying for a few years, which is they have this equipment, but they didn't have the money to pay the power to run it. Did you hear that in the documentary? That they didn't have the money to turn the wind tunnel on. And now that they have the money, you can already see the results they're capable of producing. I mean, the performances we've seen, certainly out of Kimi so far, that to me is classic Sauber territory. That is where they belong. So the hope is that they will continue to build on an encouraging start, and that makes Renault's job even more of an uphill struggle. Agreed. I'm wondering what Renault do at this point, given that they've recently paid a lot of money for some significant upgrades to their own facilities. They've significantly increased their overheads with both Daniel Ricciardo's pay packet, which I suspect is rather hefty, but also by vastly increasing the size of the team. And given that they've been moving forward year on year since they returned, to have a year where they fall back against themselves, I think would be a very hard pill for Renault to swallow. at the corporate level. So I'm really wondering if they're capable of showing some mettle over the season and toughing it out and just trying to claw out what they can, or whether we see them crumple. I think that's going to be very, very telling.
I completely agree, and I think so. There's two things that worry me around this, around Renault versus Ferrari in terms of power units and constructors as well. So the first thing I think is that Renault, with this increase in facility and expenditure and so on and so forth, if anyone's going to win the midfield development race, it should in theory be them, because they've got the power, the might, the will, blah 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 blah. So therefore they should be able to out-develop Haas and then claw back that fourth place. But that to me then shows that they didn't quite get it right immediately and should have been better at the beginning, blah 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 blah. The second issue is, and it's kind of alluding to why Ferrari was struggling, is that the huge rumour in Australia, and the reason why Ferrari was slow, Alfa Romeo was slower than expected, and potentially even Haas was slower than they expected, was that every Ferrari power unit was turned down because they had reliability worries and issues that they hadn't discovered until they arrived at Melbourne. So Ferrari lost half a second and have been going don't know why. But Haas and therefore Alfa Romeo have lost time too. So actually, if they were able to run at full beams, and that rumour is true, is Renault and therefore Mclaren actually further behind than what we think they really are, and they've got more to climb up with? Because once that reliability issue gets solved at Ferrari, if it does, they will gain 3/10.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's concerning actually, because well, first of all, I think most people came into this Grand Prix expecting Ferrari to walk away with it. I'd be concerned about that, because if they have reliability issues here, I mean, I know they've got time to look at it, but there are a lot of races that have fairly similar conditions. It depends how endemic the problem is, I suppose, but I thought, Haas qualified quite well, I felt.
Yeah.
So, were things already turned down in quali? I presume they were, right? Given that, Mercedes took a 1-2.
Yeah, apparently.
So, if Haas have got more pace, certainly over one lap to give, I mean, let's call it 3/10. I mean, we don't know for sure that's it. I mean, that's a significant amount of time. That would really pull them away. So yeah, I mean, that could kind of neuter the midfield battle a little bit.
I think so. It's interesting because if that is true and Haas pull away, that's where I thought Renault would be and should be. And so it's all about face, and it's confusing. So I kind of hope to some degree that it isn't true, and maybe it was just the Ferraris that were turned down. But apparently, from my source, which I can't name, that this was the in gossip paddock, and if it is sorted, we should expect to see Ferrari much closer later on. They still had other issues that made their drop off was worse than everyone else, but 3/10 of their reason why they were back was for engine for all of them. And I guess one of the like barrels in a smoking gun is in the Formula One YouTube channel. They've got a side-by-side comparison of Vettel versus Hamilton's hot laps. And if you constantly keep on, like, when they used to keep on like bringing the people up to each other for each sector, and then they play the sector again, like as if they were dead on time. Mm-hmm. Do you remember when they used to do that? If you do that across all of the straights, all of the time that Vettel loses, like 3 or 4 tenths of it is just down the straights. If you just like start and stop it. So they had to run a low downforce setup to compensate for the ring. To compensate for the engine, and then therefore lost more time because they had to slide around the corners and therefore were crapper. Now maybe Haas and Alfa Romeo didn't have to deal with that and went for a different strategy, so therefore lost less time. So yeah, that's the juicy.
I was worried that hadn't made it through. I thought you could have got pole, to be honest, until those cheeky laps from Ricciardo and Vettel popped up, because you were fastest in Sector 2 and Sector 3 by quite a bit, and you weren't losing that much in Sector 1. But I'm pleased I made it through, because I was worried at one point. I couldn't seem to get out of ninth. Because, well, there's a one compound gap, isn't there, between ultra soft and soft?
Yeah, it was 1.2 seconds on the Delta, so that's why I didn't go for the softs, because I'd seen the AI get knocked out in Q1. So I was like, I'm not even going to try it. So you were bold, good friend.
Oh, well, smugface then. Smugface, I suppose. Hashtag blessed. Excuse me. So, we're coming up on the halfway mark of the podcast in sort of 10 minutes or so. So we're making good pace. We've covered 3 teams so far, but there's still plenty to talk about. As we were talking about Renault there, and obviously with the Daniel Ricciardo connection, we were talking Red Bull. Why don't we take a hop, skip, and a jump over to Toro Rosso, who I would also like to talk about, because I think they were looking maybe a little feistier than I was prepared to give them credit for, and certainly Daniel Kvyat seems to have benefited from his sabbatical, his involuntary sabbatical.
Yeah,
I was actually pleased to see him score, and I thought his performances all weekend were good. But sorry, I cut you off there. Please.
No, there was one moment where I panicked slightly, which was when he tried to overtake. Who was it? Stroll, and he went off into the gravel at turn 3, and I was like, "Don't do it, Daniel! Don't do it!" But yeah, he kind of recovered, got back onto the back of it, and just kept ahead, and was good. And I think he seemed much more confident, much more happier. Chatting away at home, not looking manic depressive. I was a bit worried when Albon out-qualified him, albeit by the slimmest of margins. But I think you need to give me like 2 or 3 more races with Kvyat to make sure that he's not going to have some kind of mental breakdown, and then I'll be happy with him. I'm worried with him.
I agree. It's certainly too early to say anything, because I mean I saw already on Twitter people saying, "Oh look, it shows he should never have been dropped," and it's like, well, I'm not really sure you can say that, and I say that as someone who was sympathetic to Kvyat all along. Yeah. And you know, I felt that once they got rid of him from Red Bull for what was a flimsy reason, he earned his firing through his performances at Toro Rosso, but I didn't feel he earned the firing from Red Bull, and it was the psychological damage of that triggered the rest. Yeah. But likewise, a lot of people were saying, well, actually look how good Lance Stroll really is, which is something you and I have been saying in his rookie season, that actually he's not just there because of the money, although, well, he was there because of the money, but not only because of the money. But again, it just like you can't read too much off testing, which Renault perfectly demonstrated. You can't really say much after only a single Grand Prix, but I was happy to see him pick up a point and pick up a penguin on his on his return. And I felt it was a pretty solid performance all round, and I was pleased to see the car working quite well. Now, obviously, most of it is last year's Red Bull, and I thought to myself long and hard about what the implications of that really were, because it could go one of 2 ways, right? Either you're running a year-old car and it shows really badly, or that 1-year-old car was better than what they were able to produce themselves, which I wasn't entirely sure of. The car really is sort of 50% Toro Rosso, 50% Red Bull, and it seems to be working fine. And this is where, you know, now with both teams being on Honda, this is where that link between the two is really going to start paying off for both. And I actually expect to see Toro Rosso be one of the teams that are moving forward. I'm not sure Red Bull can make enough of a jump to get above where they are seemingly right now. I'm not sure they're going to be, on the podium at every race. Apparently, they have set themselves a target of 5 race wins this year, which I think is maybe a little optimistic. But I'm keen to see what Toro Rosso can do, because I think they'll be the ones that show off their ability to develop. Because Red Bull are going to still be in a little bit of a no man's land, I think. Albon, I still want to give a few more races to. I mean, I still get the feeling that as soon as Dan Ticktum is allowed into the car, either he or Kvyat will be gone.
Yes.
If I was to judge things based off the first Grand Prix, I wouldn't be surprised to see Gasly demoted and Kvyat put back to Red Bull in like one of the bizarrest stories in F1 history.
Oh, wouldn't that be fucking juicy though?
it would, and particularly because I'm thinking of Kvyat versus Verstappen at Singapore last year. Do you remember that?
Yep. That was personal.
Yeah, that really was a grudge match. That's like Tyson and Holyfield. So, yeah, I think a very encouraging start for Toro Rosso. I still think the car looks fantastic. Yes. I like the new team wear very much as well. It's even better than last year's. And to my mind, they will go from strength to strength. Now, whether they're hurt too much by the loss of James Key is hard to say, because presumably they'll just be iterating upon his work this year, but it looks like a solid package, and I think, golf clap all round. Well done. I agree with you, we've got to see if Kvyat can keep it up over a few races, or whether, he starts missing his daddy, or, he loses his favourite teddy bear, or Helmut Marko says something mean in the cafeteria and then reduces him to tears. We just don't know, but if the team can resist the apparently unstoppable urge to fire him, then maybe he'll see out the season in some respectability, which I think we'd like to see.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to Toro Rosso?
I think you've summed that one up rather juicily, actually. I want to second the team wear and the livery. I really like it when it's out on track. I don't know why it looks so much... I really like last year's car, but something really strikes me quite nicely about this one. I can't quite put my finger on exactly why, but it just looks yummy.
I have the exact same feeling, and I thought I was going mental. Because, ostensibly it's the exact same car.
Yeah.
But apparently it's not. And there's something about it. I don't know if they've tweaked the shading or something, but I think it looks so much better. And there's more dark blue in the team wear, which I think really works. Now, I know we're not here to do a fashion review, but...
No, but there are some sexy liveries out. I tell you what else I really, really love. I know we've already covered them. The Mclaren team livery, I really, really like the driver suits. I want some.
Yeah, they look really good, don't they? The team wear looks kind of poor compared to the race suits, and because the team wear I've seen for sale on the Mclaren store has the washed out papaya.
Oh no,
which I was really disappointed about. You have just pipped me for pole, sir, by 1.5 tenths. Good job indeed.
I was 8 hundredths behind you, and I went for a second run, but that is all my tyres done, so I can't. I can only use the same set again.
You've gained 3 tenths on me in sector 3, and I am 2 tenths up on you in sector 1. So we seem to have very different. If we start first and second, there's going to be some spicy early laps where we forget we're in a podcast again. So that's how it works when we have to race each other.
This is true.
Right, I'm going out for another run. We're having a bit of a Bottas moment here.
We are.
Now, I didn't have porridge for breakfast. I had a yoghurt. So maybe I'm not powered up sufficiently, but let's find out. I've got time for one more flying lap, I think.
Maybe it was full of probiotics, baby.
Well, you got to have those probiotics. That's what all the rappers say in their gangster songs. I've heard it. So, that allows us to segue rather nicely then into the mothership, into Red Bull. And now, I hate Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
I've always avoided saying that in the past because I sort of thought, well, it's not really relevant to anything, and I wasn't sure I was being totally fair because I still think he's possibly the talent of his generation. He's just too inconsistent and impatient and petulant. Then I watched the F1 Netflix series, and now I can definitively say I hate him. But I have to say he did a phenomenal job, given that it was a new engine package, and I know they had testing to get to grips with it, but I certainly didn't expect things to go as smoothly for him as they ultimately did. In contrast to his teammate, who I found not just disappointing, but unacceptably disappointing. And again, you can't really make any fatalistic judgments based off a single Grand Prix, I know that. And, you know, we don't like knee-jerk reactions here on the Failcast, but I felt it was rather telling that statistically, he isn't the only Red Bull driver to fail to score on his debut, which, you know, fair enough. You know, Daniel Ricciardo, Mark Webber, Sebastian Vettel, David Coulthard, none of them scored points on their Red Bull debut, apparently, as their official Twitter felt the need to tell me. But
wow, defensive
I'm pretty sure that most of them didn't also fail to get out of Q1 when, you know, in the lifetime of this qualifying format. Gasly going out in Q1 is alarming. That was really, really poor, and I couldn't, because I didn't follow the full session, I couldn't quite equate as to why that happened. Was he just that poor?
No, so they didn't send him out for a second run and thought he was safe.
Oh.
So
it was the team's fault.
Yeah, team's fault, but I would have sent him back out again because it was so blatantly obvious that the track was getting faster and faster. Because he was only 3/10 off of Verstappen's time in Q1, because Verstappen only scraped through at about 11th or 12th, something like that. But it was so close in Q1 that first to 18th was 1 second, and that was which is crazy, and I loved it, and got me slightly moist for the hope that this was going to be a much closer season. Lol. But when it's that close, and you're only a couple of tenths between like bottom and the top, and the track is evolving and it's getting better, and they should know this because V8 supercars have 4 races over the course of the Melbourne weekend, and it throws down a completely different section of rubber. So they spend all of the F1 throughout Q1 putting down their own rubber, so it's going to have a massive track evolution. I just thought it was really stupid of Red Bull to not go out and put in another lap. What I think was really, really disappointing from there on in, and it reminded me a bit of when Bottas binned it and was stuck and could only get up to about, was it 7th or 6th last year. No overtaking, wasn't able to use his advantage, and then he got stuck behind Daniel Kvyat, and it was glorious to watch Kvyat defend, re-overtake, get back in front, and just go ha. And quite what on earth, Gasly? It was a beautiful moment watching Gasly not be able to pass Kvyat, and then Kvyat pulled away.
That does have a poetry to it that I find it hard not to enjoy in a quite perverse way.
I know.
I'd be rubbing myself if we weren't live on the internet.
If we was so I'm in a group chat with loads of people from our sim racing world that we are a part of, and some of them work for different F1 teams across the couple of chats that I'm in, and generally the second half of the story was, lol, they're not going to let Leclerc pass Vettel. Lol, have you just seen Kvyat's pulling away from Gasly, hashtag redemption, and stuff like that, just all the way through. It's great.
Do you think Gasly will find his feet because I mean, fair enough, there's an excuse for the qualifying, but I mean that to me sounds a bit more concerning than just being a little bit off his teammate, because being beaten by the junior team. I mean, I don't know what the tyre situation was at the time, but it seems like there's quite a deficit between him and Verstappen over race distance. Was his strategy compromised?
Not really. I mean, he kind of got caught in the Giovinazzi train a little bit, but he shouldn't have. It shouldn't have been him stuck there in the first place. I guess. I assume that the Red Bull has the pace to be a bit like last year when it was the top three teams and they would start at the back and everyone would just power on through. Even around Monaco, they were doing it and getting back up to be in the top 6 places again. I don't see how much has changed from year on year so that they couldn't overtake and do a bit more. And the fact that he couldn't do that worried me. Over the course of the weekend, he was around Verstappen, but looked inconsistent whilst being on his pace, if that makes sense. When you look at someone and you're just like, that looks Larry.
Yeah.
It felt like that. So yeah, I'll give him a few races. I think we kind of were saying before this season, we know that this is going to be a bit like lamb to the slaughter a little bit. But I'll be interested to see how he deals with it mentally and whether or not he has a bit of if it's Kvyat to the revenge.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't want to make any judgments off a single race, but it just seemed too big to me. I mean, you expect them to be a little bit behind, maybe, but there has to be a gap that you can realistically see them closing, and it just looks a little too big for my liking. But Red Bull did say there was no pressure on him for the first 5 races, so I guess we'll see. Speaking of things that are delightfully spicy, the problem is we're perpetuating this problem again, that we're only fast when at least one of us has been drinking. Which is quite a dangerous precedent to set.
That is true.
But that is spicy indeed, because we are 0.082 seconds separated on the front row of the grid. I believe that's our best qualifying of the season.
It is, and that's probably our closest qualifying of the season as well.
It is. However, you are going to whip my backside in the first stint because I am on the soft tyre. So you're going to go straight through, I suspect, and I'm probably going to lose a few places off the line, but I think we might have, if everything goes well, which is the big ask on the Failcast, we may find ourselves having quite a close finish if the strategy plays out the way I think it might.
I'm not sure, because I'm in 2 minds over the strategy, but we'll soon find out. Right, let's move. Let me just... Hey, cheers everyone.
Chin chin, old boy.
I even used my farting bottle opener for that. I don't know if it went off.
Well, it really is high class swanky time now, isn't it? Very highbrow.
Ah.
Do you use that when you have drinks with Gore Vidal?
Oh yes, of course. I march around Westminster with my farting bottle opener.
Interesting.
And this is
interesting.
I think you might have something similar to what it's telling me.
Yeah, because either I can pit once on lap 14 and then run mediums till the end of the Grand Prix, or it's only 6 seconds slower, well, less than 6 seconds slower, to run softs till lap 14, run ultra softs for 5 laps, and then run softs again till the end, so which keeps me off the medium. It's
telling me doing softs twice as well, so which I will be doing.
Do I try and one-stop it on the mediums? Because the problem is, like, there's quite a deficit in lap time, isn't there? That I'm not sure I make up. I mean, it tells me that I'll make up the time, but I'm really not sure I will. I am going to go... If you're 2-stopping, I'm going to 1-stop, and I can always change it on the fly.
That's true.
I'm going to put a little bit of extra fuel in, which I know is going to bog me down off the line even more, but I'm prepared to, like, drop some places at the start and then try and crawl claw it back when everyone pits, which will be about lap 5 or 6, I guess.
I'm lap 5.
Based on the degradation of these tyres.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, best of luck to you, matey boy. Now, for people who don't normally watch the podcast, welcome. We're pleased to have you with us. We forget that we're hosting a podcast for the first 2 laps because it gets a bit leery.
Anyone that's played F1 2018 knows what the AI is like.
Yeah. Let us begin. I'm worried I'm going to lose my win again on the start because I'm going to get monstered so badly off the line. I'm leading us away for the second time this season. 4 points separate us, so it's all to play for.
We're going to need some work on the brakes, so put some energy into them on the tyres as well.
Indeed. I get slightly nervous at the fact that you're directly ahead of the formation lap as well.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the friendly love tap.
So, though this isn't F1 related, but
when is this podcast ever F1 related? Go on.
That's true. So
give us your anecdote.
On the V8 Supercars this weekend, which was also running at Albert Park, they did 4 races and like a couple of them are sprint ones. They're on their way round to the grid on their reconnaissance lap to the grid. The 2 guys who were on the front row of the grid took each other out down at turn 4. Smashed into each other, limped back to the pits. So row 2 was then row 1 for the start because they both had to retire. It was hilarious.
That's the ultimate Grosjean.
It was.
Incidentally, was Marcus Ericsson described as the cause?
No, but he was suspiciously in the pit lane all weekend because they kept panning to him with reserve driver written all over him. And I was like, Merrickson.
No, poor Merrickson.
He'll be racing this weekend coming, actually, for round 2 at Indy. I look forward to seeing him do well, because he done well in his Indy debut.
Well, I mean, I think he's really come along as a driver. That's why I was sad to see him drop for Giovinazzi. Right, I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to get into the zone, as it were.
The zone. I'll get into the colour zone.
Because I really don't want to fuck this up.
And I promise I will try not to hit you this time after Germany.
We've hit each other a lot this season.
We have.
Actually.
It's been our most feistiest argy-bargy season, I think.
And we had our worst start to the season as well. I imagine where we could have been if we didn't... We had so many double DNFs and... I was a bit slow off the line. Yep, there I go, being monstered.
Watch out, you've got
by everybody and his mum. Oh, Vettel's having a go at you.
Fuck right up. Sorry.
You tell him, mate.
Making Leclerc stay behind him.
I know, we will definitely get onto that, but actually, why don't we get onto Alfa Romeo once lap 1 is over and hopefully we're all intact.
Oh, you done what
I don't know what you did there, but it almost cost me my wing.
I nearly spun coming out of the chicane and now I've gone wide. That was in the lead. Oh! Well, that's one way of dealing with Hamilton.
Yeah, he's out. He drove into the side of me as well and I got a warning for the collision.
I've got no grip in this car at all. It's horrible.
Yeah, I was going to say, you look like you're struggling, mate. But I played it very, very cautious. I backed off super early into the braking zones to try and make it through the first lap. And it seems to have paid off. I'm derating by the end of the lap, though, so it's quite heavy on the ERS. Okay, so back to the F1 podcast that we're pretending to host.
Yeah.
Let's talk Alfa Romeo. Now, one of the predictions we made going into the season is that we might see Kimi waking up, because traditionally he's a lot sharper at teams that are not Ferrari.
Yep.
And that seems to have been borne out during round one, because I thought Kimi had an excellent start to the season. I thought his weekend was strong all round. He looks comfortable, he looks sharp. I think I still love the livery of that car. I think it looks fantastic, and I'm really pleased, even though they're not called Sauber anymore officially, they still have Sauber on the side of the car, and it's still Sauber in my heart, and I'm really pleased to see them doing so well. It delights me, and particularly if the rumours we were talking about earlier are indeed true, and the team was running compromised with the power unit turned down. I'm really keen to see what they're able to deliver over the coming rounds. I hear as well that they're going to pursue some early upgrades. Now, hopefully they deliver some performance also. So all in all, I'm prepared to give them a really good bill of health. What worries me a little bit more is Giovinazzi doesn't look quite so comfortable yet, but obviously it's early days. We don't really want to write him off just yet. That wouldn't be very productive. You are monstering me on straight line speed. We must have different setups.
7-8 on wings, I think I am.
Yeah, I think I'm about the same, so I don't know, but maybe it's just my tyres are slower. Though I've just set the fastest sec to 1, apparently. Yeah, what's your thoughts on Giovinazzi's start to his Alfa Romeo career?
I thought he was decent in practice, and actually in qualifying he wasn't too bad until he got taken out. I think he got wrong-footed slightly early in the... what was I going to say? Do you know what? Boxer slap.
You're having a brain fart because we're racing each other again, but I'm braking way later than you. I don't know what we've done. Oh, that's an early stop.
Yeah, Jeff's told me.
Why has he brought you in so early? Are your tyres knackered already?
Yeah.
Ooh. Well, you gave me the DRS, so thanks for that, because that's going to hopefully keep Bottas behind me. Oh, not quite. I don't know if I regret picking these tyres or not. It's too early to say, I suppose.
I think you're going to be alright, because I think I'm going to end up on my next stint on the mediums.
Oh yeah, because you're pitting 2 laps early. Yeah, you're going to need to switch to the mediums. But that means we're both on the mediums at the end. So it could still be a spicy one.
Yeah,
so I don't think we have much more to really elaborate on, right? In terms of Alfa Romeo, because it just looked like a very, very respectable start, and certainly a solid platform on which to build. I did expect them to out-qualify Haas, which didn't happen. But I think over the course of the season, I do think they will outperform Haas, who looked stronger than I gave them credit for, and we'll probably talk about them next. But I do still see Alfa Romeo as the de facto number 2 Ferrari team, even if that hasn't played out so far.
Yeah. Agree. No, I agree on that. I think there was 2 things I wanted to say about Alfa Romeo before we move on. Giovinazzi, excellent overtaking. There's a hint of Kevin Magnussen in there, because he does like a bit of a weave. So he just needs to sort that out a little bit so that he makes sure that he's fair. But he defended really, really well actually, and put himself in all the right places without binning it, which was good. Because I was a bit worried that if he was going to bin it here, his rep would be sorted.
Yeah.
What else was
he wouldn't have done himself any favours with that, because he was already on thin ice with a lot of fans. Even though I think, again, it was a knee-jerk reaction to judge him off. It was Malaysia, wasn't it? It was completely unnecessary to judge him based on that. My ERS doesn't really recharge on medium very quickly at all. And I'm scared to say it to low, because Bottas will eat me for breakfast with his porridge.
The AI round era suddenly have got much, much better than what they were in qualifying. I've lost out to Ricciardo in the pits. This is horrible. I will not be fighting for any kind of win whatsoever. The second thing I wanted to do about Alfa Romeo was just a little anecdote from Kimi Raikkonen, who I've still yet to listen to his Beyond the Grid episode, but I have noticed that it is the shortest Beyond the Grid episode that's ever been released so far, which just made me giggle.
What a surprise.
But in the press conference, he was quoted as saying, "My party lifestyle has helped me be a better F1 race driver, and long may that last."
Yes, indeed. That is a very 1980s driver thing to say. But I mean, to be honest, he seems a little bit tamer since he returned to F1. I think he was a little leery sort of in his Lotus days, but he settled down into being, a dad. He doesn't seem as wild as he once was. I mean, getting his knob out in nightclubs and drinking until he falls unconscious. Those days seem to be behind him.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that he has woken up, because I so wanted Sauber to do well, and I do have a fondness for Kimi, but if it was up to me, he would have retired 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It turns out it's lucky that it wasn't up to me, because we might see him go out on a high. But surely his 2-year stint at Sauber has to be the end. I mean, at this rate, though, he could go on till he's 45. I mean, we've been saying he's going to retire for about 4 years now, and it just hasn't come. I mean, he's going to be the first driver since Mansell, I believe... No, Berger, to turn 40 in the car, because Berger turned 40 in his last season, didn't he? Or was he 39?
I think he's 39, but he was knocking on... Not knocking on heaven's door. Don't say that. But yeah. Shout out to Magnussen, who's up into third on his soft tyres, 10 seconds behind me. Bottas has made his ultra softs last 7 laps. Amazing.
Still not. He's half a second behind me, still not pitted. I have to say, my car is feeling better and better as I go.
Same. I'm glad I'm on the softs.
Yeah, it seems to be the winner's tyre. I'm starting to wonder now if maybe it is better to do a short stint on the ultras and then switch to the softs. Again, it depends how the mediums feel, I suppose. But how's my tyre wear looking? Not great, but because I've still got apparently 7 laps to go. But I think I can make them last. I'm hoping Bottas pits this lap and then I can sort of back off a little bit. Recharge my ERS. And Bottas dives into the pits. That frees me up to sort of breathe a little bit. I've got a 10 or 11 second cushion now to Magnussen. So, who remains on our list for discussion? Let's talk about... yeah, let's talk about Haas. That was the logical step over. Yeah. Elephant in the room. Romain Grosjean. Already people are saying, well, next year's Netflix documentary can just recycle the footage from last year.
Wasn't Gunther Steiner fucking amazing in that whole thing? I love
Yeah,
Gunther
he was.
Steiner.
I want to give a shout out to him actually for having the word wankers in his vocabulary, given that he's a German who lives in America and probably shouldn't really have heard that word anywhere. I was delighted to see him using it, and what amazed me was the scene where they have a dinner party and don't invite Romain Grosjean.
I know! He did not want to be here, and I immediately in my head I was like, did you invite him?
Well, I mean, also he tore so many strips off Roman in that documentary that because you and I were talking at the end of last season, and over the course of the gap between last season and this season, that we couldn't fathom why Gunther Steiner had chosen to keep Romain Grosjean as Kevin Magnussen's partner. And I was hoping the Netflix documentary would shine the light on that, but it turns out even Gunther Steiner doesn't seemingly know why Gunther Steiner chose to keep Romain Grosjean on, because at no point during that documentary did I think he was in any way sympathetic towards Romain. Or that supportive of him. And Jean didn't sound happy on the phone either from Gunther's responses, so it's a complete mystery. He doesn't come with much money. He did a terrible job. The mechanics seemed to have no patience with him at all, from what we saw. What is going on? I tell you what, though, it did make me like Haas a little bit more, given that they do seem to have a very genuine team spirit.
Yeah.
That I really did like. Although points off for the last episode where they're seen grassing on Renault to try and to try and get their position in the constructors. Through sneaky, underhanded means. I mean, I suppose you're supposed to, report incidents and so on, but it did seem a little bit petty to me.
Yeah, the signs one at Circuit of the Americas, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, that documentary made me like K-Mags.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been a fan of K-Mags for the last, 2-3 years, to be honest. I kind of felt that he did a really good job at McLaren and then was punished for not being Jenson Button or Fernando Alonso, which I don't think is really a crime. And then I felt Renault discarded him far too quickly, but that turns out to have been the best thing that could have happened to him, because he seems to be very popular at Haas. He seems to really like it there, and I think he does a really, really good job, actually. And he's got a mentality that I don't like in other drivers, but for some reason I like with him.
I think because he has like this cheeky, chappy attitude about him. He reminds me of... He's like the human equivalent of a small yappy terrier who doesn't quite understand what his size is, but will still go like... Rah! Anyway...
Well, I mean, I think that's it. It's because he's not petulant with it. It doesn't come across as arrogant in the same way as it does when it comes out of the mouth of someone like Verstappen.
Yeah.
And I can't quite, maybe people in chat have some idea about why Magnussen's likeable but Verstappen isn't. But there's just something that he gets away with it. Mm-hmm. And the documentary, I think, only made me like him a little bit more. So, yeah, I'm kind of ambivalent about Haas. What did you make of their performance over the weekend?
Notwithstanding
thoughts there?
The obvious thing that we'll probably talk about, I was actually really, really quite impressed. I thought that this would be the start of a plateauing into like 5th or 6th, but no, they genuinely had the pace, and I hadn't really seen that pace during testing. In the long runs, speaking to people who I know that work at Haas, they seemed just as surprised. They had quite quiet confidence, but were pleased that it worked there as well. So yeah, I think it was not a fairy tale story, because it wasn't like that magnificent, but I think they were delightedly pleased at how it all went, and I think they feel like they can... Oh, Christ. Oh, fuck it, I'm keeping that place.
It's your birthday.
Yeah,
give it to yourself.
It's my birthday. I don't care if I cut the chicane in the game. It's not even realised. What was I going to say? Yeah, it's... it just seems to flow really, really nicely, apart from the obvious drama lines.
Yeah, do you want to usher in the obvious drama? I'll give you the honour of that.
So, throughout... I don't know what it was like on other TV channels around the country, but Sky F1 basically had the ginormousest erection every time someone mentioned Haas in a pit stop. Like, as if they'd forgotten that... I don't know, they've done 20 races since the last time that they had a pit stop problem.
Yeah.
And none of them had ever mattered in their life. And so, when it came to Melbourne, I thought this was going to be such not even a matter to be thinking of, because it's been a year and everyone should know what they're doing. But no, the wheel nut got stuck. They held it this time, but essentially what had happened was that they whoever it was there on that pit gun had jammed the wheel nut on in such a forceful way to make sure that he could get it on and get it out. it then screwed around with the wheel nut, sheared itself off, and that was what caused the retirement at the end. Absolutely
Indeed.
bizarre. So you kind of think, well, how did that happen? B, is that new staff again? Because that's what happened last time. Having now watched the documentary, I understand that it was new staff that caused the problem last year. Hello, traffic.
But a lot of people had issues with pit stops at the start of last year, as I recall, because wasn't there an issue with wheel nuts expanding in the heat?
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think, wasn't it Williams who, or Force India, I think, someone had a problem. My memory's failing me because I'm trying to concentrate on not being slow, and I'm being slow anyway. But I'm pretty sure there was one or two teams that had issues with heat dissipating into the wheel nuts, and this was causing them trouble in the pit stops.
Oh.
And I'm pretty sure Haas was one of those teams. But it did look like from the documentary that the main issue was an inexperienced pit crew member. Interestingly, it was quite telling that they didn't show what happened to that pit crew member.
So I saw him in the background later on in the season, so he wasn't sacked.
But maybe he wasn't on the wheel guns anymore.
No,
because not every mechanic serves on the pit crew, right?
No, that's true. Because I spotted him at that gala event. They panned to him and he's in the table when they're talking to him in the background, and I was like, oh, not sacked. But yeah, I don't know what he was doing.
I'm not sacked, honest. I don't know how, but I'm not too far away from lapping a Sauber.
Yeah, there was... When I came out of the pits from my stop, Ericsson and Sorokin, I think, had a coming together because they were about 20 seconds off everyone else. And we've only
I have 18 seconds on Vettel. I don't think that's enough to come out ahead of him, is it?
No. Bottas and I are about another 3 seconds behind. Because we had to get round all of the soft tyre runners, which took a while. But Vettel got out ahead of a lot of them.
I'm hoping this is a flying in lap. And then maybe, just maybe, I can at least fight on pit exit. But I doubt I'll find so many seconds.
Give me all the seconds.
I'm a little scared going into the pits here as well because it's quite a sharp turn. So I don't like to carry too much speed on pit entry, and I think the AI are faster than me on that. Well, you know me in pit stops. That's why I always have my most embarrassing moments.
It's told me you've been in the pits 3 times. I'm not quite sure why it's so obsessed with telling me that.
Yeah, that isn't true.
But you just like going back and forth over the sensor line, just like yo-yoing it.
Maybe.
So, yeah,
well, Magnussen is staying out longer than me. I am going to be fighting Vettel on exit. Oh no, I'm not, because the speed differential is massive. But he's on softs, which tells me he's pitting again, so as long as he doesn't get... And I've beaten Bottas, which is important, and he's pitting again as well, so things are looking good. It depends. I think you're the rogue element here. You're the one that we have to keep an eye on, because you could be a bit more flexible in your stratagems.
I don't think I will be. I'm struggling the muggling.
I think Bottas is faster than me, but he was faster than me on the first stint, and I managed to keep him behind with strategic use of my fat arse. So let's try and do that again.
Very Giovinazzi of you.
So, I wanted to move on to Force India Badger Stroll eyebrow team, if I can.
I forgot about them, sorry.
Because Lance Stroll, I thought, pretty good job.
Yeah.
Done Daddy proud, I think. And I had a chance to show some potential that you and I have often thought was definitely there, and that the Williams wasn't really allowing him to deliver upon. Now the question is really whether he's capable of consistency, because that's the main thing, right? That's what they need. But certainly a good start. Oh, Bottas, why is it always you that takes off my front wing?
Oh no. Is it completely gone?
I might have to pit It's hard to say.
I'm all right with the yellow bit. I caught mine on Leclerc.
Yeah, the car's understeery now. Mine's orange. It might be a bit too much. He should get penalised for that. What a douche. Don't care how much porridge he advertises.
I had a YouTube advert for him the other day where, earlier on today, and he was inside some like electric, like bionic chair thing, and this woman, who I can only assume has never heard Valtteri's first name ever be spoken, goes, "So hello there, Valtterieri." And I was like, what is that?
Oh, Bottas, I think you've cost me this race. I think he's cost me the race. My pace is really suffering, and I really can't afford to be pitting again, because that's going to neutralise any advantage I had. I don't know, though. If I can keep up with him, maybe I can pit the same... I don't know, but then I have to lose time changing my wing. I really don't know whether it's worth me staying out or not. I can't tell exactly how much time I'm losing. I think I'm going to try and make it work. I can always pit towards the end of the race if necessary, I guess. But he is getting away from me, but that could be the tyres. He's got 2 seconds on me now.
Slowly closing you down.
Yeah, because it handles like bullshit now. It was such a stupid accident as well. Like, I didn't run into the back of him or anything. He just... I had the racing line. He pulled up on the inside, and then he turned in on me towards the outside and just nudged off my front wing, and then we hit each other a second time going round the corner side by side. So really it was a racing incident, but I'm going to be angry and disdainful of him anyway, because I can be.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just making me very late on the power.
Battles on
So yeah,
anything
anything else on Racing Point? We didn't really talk about Checo or how the car itself was looking.
No, so it was an entirely new car for Melbourne. They had no idea whether or not it's going to be fast or not, so they were pleased to get points in general. Checo looked out of sorts, apart from Q2 and Q3, where he seemed to come of age. But Stroll outpaced him every single session all the way through, until qualifying, where he then he got caught up in traffic. It was Carlos Sainz who got caught out behind when Kubica had his puncture in qualifying.
Yes, that's right.
So that was a boom. The not weird thing, I guess, is not weird. The funny thing, get the words right, Simon, is watching Sport Pezza's Facebook page. Now, as a fellow taco Mexican friend, I know that you are aware of just how very passionate our Mexican friends can be. And
Si, senor.
They have spent all the run-up to the season saying about how Daddy has paid for the seat, this, that and the other, and Lance Stroll has no talent, blah, 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 blah. After qualifying, it absolutely exploded with people going, get Lance out the car, he should be replaced for the next race, he's disgraceful, blah, 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 blah. There was 190 comments. After the race, on the race post, 32. Right? And the top quote is, "This chat has got surprisingly quiet," from a Canadian, because you can see the Canadian flag in their profile picture. And I was just like, ha! I just found it really, really funny that they seem to have a very one-sided media campaign going on over at Sport Pezza because it's Perez's team. So yeah, let's hope Perez gets up to it soon.
I should start following Orlen then, the Polish petrochemical company that sponsors Williams and Kubica now, to see if the same thing happened there. It's probably full of all tin hat conspiracy theories now, though. I seem to be catching back up to Bottas. I don't know how that's happening. You're catching me, though, for sure.
I'm boxing this lap.
It says I'm 6 seconds behind Bottas, but I don't think that's true, is it?
No, because I can... Oh no, we've got a Williams ahead. And then it's...
Oh, it's a Williams. Oh, they're basically the same colour on the radar. That's what it is then.
Yeah.
Well, I know Bottas is going to go a few laps longer than you, but I don't think he'll pull out a full pit stop's worth. So, if I can keep the car on the road, it might still be up for grabs. Could do with a nice little win from my collection. However, I just want to see Badger 4 Stroll Racing Point India Cheese do well, because I've got such affection for the guys behind the scenes. Like, even though it's the worst team name I think I've ever encountered, I just want them to succeed, because they do such amazing work, and they were doing amazing work with no money at all. That now they've got the money, I just want to see what they can do, and I really, even if that means one day having to say Lance Stroll race winner, I can definitely stomach that, because I don't have a particular disdain for Lance Stroll, to be honest.
No, I don't have a problem with him. I think he
I mean, F1's always been about money to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I mean, look how much money Fernando Alonso brought to Ferrari through Santander. What was funny about that, though, is that Santander also sponsored Jenson Button, and all their adverts featured Button and not Sorokin. Very nearly turned in on me there while I was lapping him under blue flags.
Oh my god.
Like, a really violent turn-in as well. What a dickbag. Because actually, I mean, again, this is not really related to what we're talking about, but I did really enjoy the Jenson Button adverts for Santander. They were really good. Did you see them?
Yeah. Turning up in various people's houses. Oh, hello.
Or, yeah, behind the cash machine.
Yeah.
Do you remember when they hid him in a cash machine and then people would press the button and he would pop out the back and give them 500 quid?
Yeah.
I tell you what I also enjoyed is in the run-up to, I believe it was a 2010 or 11 British Grand Prix, there was a series of adverts with Lewis and Jenson Button in a camper van. And they were going around petrol stations giving people money and hugs and things, and that was really good. Mclaren with those two drivers, and you know, Vodafone sponsoring them, a British company, and the whole thing, like, that was a marketer's wet dream. You don't get many tie-ups like that now, although I do think Leclerc is going to start delivering that. As we're down to the last 13 laps, we should get onto the big two teams then. We've been saving them for last.
Yes.
Because there is quite a lot of juicy stuff to talk about. Now, we've already touched on Ferrari's performance being disappointing, and it truly was disappointing. I expected them to walk away with this race based on what we'd seen before the season, and I'm still hoping they do prove to be the team to beat. Now, Ferrari had made no secret of the fact that they were going to have priority for Vettel for at least the early part of the season, is what they've said. I'm pretty sure it's going to be long term. I was a little disappointed to see Leclerc yield so easily so early, but at the same time I didn't really expect anything different, I suppose, because he just seems like a genuinely nice guy, and Ferrari is his one true love. So when he got on the radio and said, should I stay behind Vettel, I thought, I kind of like that you're asking that. I'm prepared to do it and, you know, serve your, let's call it your apprenticeship. But at the same time, like, if anyone needed a fire lighting under their arse, it's Vettel, and you'd think Ferrari would allow him to kindle that fire a little bit. Like in the first race of the season, there's not really a lot to lose, so I don't know why you would prioritise him early in the season when nothing's decided. I mean, all you're saying there is that we want to give Sebastian priority for the championship.
Yeah. And that may not necessarily be the best thing. I mean, Leclerc was a bit of a strange one, I thought, in the race, because he made a mistake down at turn 1 and went off into and cut through, which I don't think helped him particularly early on. Later on in the race, though, he was absolutely steaming through. Oh, Ericsson, don't do that. AI on lapping round here is atrocious.
Yeah, it is.
But his second half of the race was much, much better, because he dropped away to being like 10 seconds off of Vettel almost immediately, and then kind of just stayed there, and it kind of made me think, oh, I don't know if that is then him just being like, I'll just keep a gap and troll around. But he's always kind of maintained, I'm alright with being number 2 for now, but it's up to me to keep on showing the performance that I'm number 1. The weird thing was that Ferrari, in keeping him behind Seb, then did not let him pit and go for the fastest lap, because he had enough gap over Magnussen to come out by about 10 or 11 seconds. But because Vettel was going so slowly, that gap then evaporated, so that he couldn't then do that anymore and come out ahead of Magnussen. And that to me is a bit of an own goal, because that is then 1 point that went to Mercedes that should have, in theory, tactically, gone to Ferrari had someone have had the nous to do that.
Well, that though shows me that I was right to say it's a fucking stupid rule. And
Agreed.
certainly restricting it to the top 10 cars is a stupid rule.
Agreed.
But I mean, whichever car is fastest in the weekend is almost certainly going to take that point. Because if you're in the top 10, chances are you're in the tight midfield, or you're worried about a race win, and you're not going to pit for fresh tyres. And if you're outside the top 10, then you've got no incentive at all to go for it, because you can't even win it. So all that's going to happen is whoever wins the race is probably going to end up taking the extra point.
Yeah.
It's a stupid rule created by cretins, and I want to see it abolished.
Yes, please. Please.
I've lost out thanks to Bottas damaging my wing, because Vettel's just got by me. Oh, but I've got by him again. So who knows what the hell's happening now. But I don't think I can keep Vettel behind for 10 laps. I'm having to brake really early to stay online, and it's costing me a lot of time, because that's where I was getting all my pace from. It wasn't that I had any straight line speed, it was that I was able to brake late.
Oh, that sounds like my Canada setup. Sorry, my Spain setup. Get monster down the straight.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest though, I think over race distance, Leclerc seemed to be the faster of the two.
Yeah, he picked it up in the second half and was perfectly fine. I don't know if Vettel had a mechanical issue and that's what they were saying, oh, we'll back off. Maybe that was the engine drama for him being a bit worse than what it was for Leclerc, I don't know. But yeah, initially I was a bit muted on Leclerc. I don't know why. I decided in my head he was just going to come in and just be like, wah, wah, and just like wipe the floor. But no, I was quietly quite happy with what he done at the end of it all.
Stop turning into me, Vettel. It's not nice.
The gap behind us is 2.2.
How come he gets the Durs? Ah, I see, you don't like it, do you? No. So let's play nice in future. Yeah, I mean, I was secretly hoping that Ferrari would win, and it would be Leclerc who got the win. That would have been kind of a fairy tale story for me, particularly with all the stuff around Jules Bianchi and Leclerc's father dying. I still think Leclerc is going to be the sensation of the season. I expected him to have a difficult first few rounds because Bottas is feisty. He's already caught up to me and Vettel, and we had like a 10-second gap over him. He's on the softs as well, so he's going to be faster. So I'm not too shocked that he didn't come out on top in the first Grand Prix, because I thought, like at Sauber, it'll take him a few rounds to find his feet and get comfortable and get his feet under the table. But I think ultimately there's every chance that he could be the faster of the two of the guys in red and could go on to deliver some very, very good performances over the year that make Ferrari second guess their view on prioritising Vettel every time. Because, I mean, after Vettel, I think, cost them the championship last year, I don't know why they would continue to make him the focus automatically. I mean, maybe if it makes sense, sure, but don't just hand it to him, no questions asked. I really thought Leclerc's arrival would stop Ferrari running as if they're a one-car team, because, we've seen them do that basically since Schumacher arrived in the team, and I don't think it serves them well at all.
No.
And I think it kills careers, to be honest. Or at least Nuta's careers. I mean, you're still driving for Ferrari, I suppose.
You're not allowed to
I don't really have much more to add to them, except that I'm really hoping that we see them find their feet in round 2, because if Mercedes' form over the weekend is anything to go by, it's going to be a very boring season.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried if it is going to be like that, but hopefully Melbourne is not always a true reflection, and we had this last year where Mercedes wiped the floor in quali, less so in the race because of strategy, but then by the time we got to Bahrain, it was then a Ferrari, I was going to say Ferrari fuckfest, that's not what I meant. A Ferrari show!
That's another straight-to-DVD porn film that you have directed.
Exactly. Hey, nice nose cone. Wow, you're really spoiling.
Senor.
Oh yeah, what a big halo. Anyway, gosh, we go on forever with that. Yeah, worried. The only kind of main hope that I have is perhaps if we turn our attention to the Mercedes, Daddy Bottas. Mercedes. Yeah. Actually, shout out to Total Wolf here, who predicted that this year's world champion will be Valtteri Bottas, and how we all giggled. I mean, part of me hoped it would be true. Like, if Mercedes have to win, then I want it to be Bottas. Yeah.
But that's a new Valtteri Bottas. That's an upgraded Valtteri Bottas. Now, normally when a Mercedes driver grows a beard and starts looking like he's been living in a bin, it's a sign that he's going to be off the pace of his teammate.
Yep.
But not this time. Just an all-round fantastic performance.
Yeah, it was.
He just looked cool, collected, calm. Oh, that's my front wing totally gone now.
Oh no.
Thanks, Bottas, you nerd.
He was just saying nice things.
Yeah, I have to box. That's my race win lost. I'm not even going to get on the podium, I don't think.
Nope, because here I am as well now.
And now I keep running into Vettel. I'm trying to hold him up for you. Let's call it a birthday gift.
Haha, I'm here, dude. Ooh, you lost me out.
If I can't win, I want you to win.
Oh, this is a drama. Now I've got Ricciardo all over me as well, because I can't get... No down, Rick. Thank you very much.
I did what I could. I really could have won this race.
Oh, Danny Rick's just done an absolute blinder.
Straight down both of you?
No, he gently tapped me on my right rear, which ever so slightly put me out wide. I've just got back past him again. But yeah, he just like done a little cheeky honey badger nudge. I was like, no. This is not how it goes. Down. I want a second.
Okay, I've come out in 8s and they put me on softs for some reason.
Oh, is that because you went on harder compound?
Oh yeah, I don't have any ultras left. But I had to come in, there was no way I could keep the car on the road after that.
No. But no, I agree, even though he's just ruined your race. Upgraded Bottas, new beard. I've seen pictures of him now where he's like got 2 hands out sticking his fingers up at people. I don't know where this has come from.
Didn't he say fuck you when he crossed the line?
Yeah. To who it may concern, fuck you. And I don't know who that is necessarily aimed at. If that is at Hamilton, if that is at Ocon. I don't know.
Well, he said the people it was for would know it was for them. He also... well, oh no, it was Hamilton who said, oh, the gap to Bottas was only so big because I allowed it to be so big. And I was thinking, that sounds like a man who actually didn't have the race under his control at all.
No.
I don't believe that for a second.
I've seen pictures where he's got damage to the floor of his car, but I don't know where he sustained that, and it couldn't have been immediately at turn 1, lap 1. Because he was off from the beginning, wasn't he?
Yeah. So, I just think that sounds like sour grapes on Lewis's part, but I like this new Bottas. I mean, maybe he can stop telling people to fuck off when he crosses the line, but aside from that, I'm really happy to see him. Oh, Alonso's just gone back into the back of Sirotkin while trying to lap him, and there's front wing bits everywhere that I had to swerve to avoid. But I'm glad to see Sirotkin's not just being a dick to me. I might come out of this 5th if I can keep the pace up.
Ooh, that'd be good.
Yeah, I don't want you to get too many points ahead. It's Spa at the next round, and you've always historically been better there than me. But I'm hoping I can catch the Hulk for 6th, and then boogie my way up to 5th.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, I really do. This is the Bottas I hoped to see last year. You know, a chance for him to build on his first season at the team, but it just didn't come. Yeah. And I think he shook himself quite badly with his qualifying accident in Melbourne, and never really seemed to find his feet after that.
Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of bad luck earlier on in the season, which didn't help either. So it was like as if his championship had come undone before it could even get going. And then you can't recover from that when you've got the likes of Hamilton that will penalise whatever is thrown his way, kind of thing. So yeah, difficult one. But I hope that.
Oh, sorry.
I know. I was going to say. I hope this isn't a flash in the pan, and it just is a confidence builder, because he's already done more wins in one race this season than he has the entire of last season. So let's hope it builds.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know if this is representative of really where Mercedes are, and part of me hopes it's not. But if it is, like I say, I want it to be Bottas who takes the lead. But I mean, it seems weird to me that Mercedes seem to have unlocked a lot of pace since they changed their front wing to have those dimples in the side, which seems like an odd thing to happen. If we were playing the F1 2020 game, 2019 game, sorry, I would have just earned an extra point with my fastest lap.
You would have done. Very strange.
2 laps now to catch Hulkenberg. Where are you, sir?
I am second. I am
fantastic.
Not really catching Bottas. I'm struggling to keep Vettel and Ricciardo behind me. But I think I will. Because they're busy arguing with each other.
And But I was right. We did catch up to each other at the end of the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
It's just then I had my wing incident.
I think this would have been juicier because I'd have got to you with a couple of laps to go if there was everyone still behind you. I think that would have been an absolutely epic finale.
As ever, we are denied our classic finish. We very rarely get a race to the finish. I think it's only happened like twice in 10 years, but makes it all the more worthwhile.
Why change the habit?
I want to see where Mercedes and Ferrari are relative to each other at the next Grand Prix. I mean, I certainly think Ferrari is the better power unit, and I say that based on the relative performances of their B teams.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
And so I could believe that Ferrari had to turn down their power units in all their teams for reliability reasons, but I still think maybe aerodynamically Mercedes have the superior machine, but I do think Ferrari is the engine to have, and certainly the power circuits I would expect Ferrari to do well. I still don't feel equipped based on the first Grand Prix to really see what the running order is likely to be for the season, and I guess that's true of every season. But again, as I said at the outset of the episode, the finishing order of everybody just surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily...
Big surprises were Danny Rick and Hülkenberg never really looking likely contenders for where I hoped they would be. Verstappen in the Red Bull delivering a podium that I don't think anyone really saw coming. Kvyat doing a sterling job at Toro Rosso. And Leclerc and Vettel just not being where we thought.
Do you have an opinion over... I'll start that again. I was going to say something before I asked the question, but I decided to ask you the question without actually deciding to tell you what I wanted to talk about. On top of that, the other thing that I wanted to bring up was... well, there's two things, but the first one, the most important one, is Romain Grosjean making a comment that actually this year cars are able to run way more closer together, but overtaking is still an issue, but he could feel the difference between cars actually being able to run closer together, and I could see it out on track actually that you could do it, but it was the tyre temperatures going up heating wise that was causing the issue, so that you then had to drop back, but aerodynamically you could run closer. And I was just wondering if you had a particular opinion or thought on that, or noticed it be better.
I hadn't really given it any thought, I'll be honest with you, but I'm pleased to hear that seems to be the case, because we've got a control tyre situation, so that's actually something very easy for them to sort out.
Yeah. Oh, you're so close!
I know. No, he's got it.
Bugger.
Oh, I just needed a few more meters. Still though, I'll take 7. Yay. I got an achievement for that. I don't know, the Trooper. I don't know what the... Oh, it's 25 online races.
Oh yeah, level 25. Nice. So that was the other thing. The other thing I wanted to bring up was something that happened post-race with Daniel Ricciardo. I don't know if you've seen this, but it revolves around him telling Jenny Gao to shut the fuck up.
That doesn't sound like something he'd say.
I've seen it on video. It's hilarious. So there's a Dutch reporting channel, and their stuff is all about like chilled and relaxed stuff. So he's just chatting away, and Jenny Gao is really loudly doing a piece to camera behind, and it's put off Danny Rick, so he's lost track of what he's saying, and so he stops and he goes, "I'm really sorry, she's talking really loudly behind me and I've lost my train of thread." And the Dutch reporter guy goes, "Like always." So clearly Jenny Gao is known for being very loud in the paddock. So he then looks behind, he goes, "Yeah, she should shut the fuck up," like that. And then like the reporter laughs and they keep going. But it sparked off like this big thing. And then later on in someone else's interview, Jenny Gow and the reporter from the Dutch thing are having a standing up slanging match behind the drivers, and they're like pointing microphones at each other and being proper angry. So I need to dig deeper, but yeah, apparently it is handbags and microphones at dawn.
I did see Jenny Gow's Twitter, actually. She tweeted at Daniel Ricciardo saying that she got home and her husband told her to shut the fuck up as soon as she walked through the door, so he started a trend.
So, yeah,
I just want to say bravo, sir. You put it on the podium, and you have expanded your lead over me quite significantly, 111 points to 95. So,
nice.
But we have closed the gap a little bit on Mercedes. We may still catch them by the end of the season at this rate. I mean, obviously, that's down to you taking Lewis Hamilton out, which still tickles me a little bit.
I'm at your service, kind sir.
But all round, the performance I think we can both be happy with. I think I could have won it.
Yeah,
I could have won it. So I'm happy with that, and I still got the fastest lap by 0.7 of a second. So, whoop whoop, that is the sound of the police. And I believe this is the first episode where we've not had police sirens.
It is.
So that's the only sound of the police you've heard.
Boom. Excellent.
Fantastic to be back, and a solid episode. Good start to the season so far. I will once again wish you a very delightful happy birthday, and offer my sincere thanks to everybody who stopped by and watched. We are pathetically grateful as ever. We're back in 2 weeks, are we not? Following whatever round 2 is now.
Yeah, I think is it Bahrain that's next in the F1 calendar. So
I think it is.
It is now. So yeah, we'll join you then. If anyone is daring, please leave in the comments who you think might win and what you think will change, and we'll laugh at it next episode. And thanks for joining, because we actually had a good 7-8 people in the stream and a bit of chat as well. So great.
And we had 3 over my side, so we're getting there. Everyone have a fantastic weekend, and do enjoy the next race, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time. Love you, bye! Nah.
Nom 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 nom. I'm still drunk.